Hello everyone. Today, Eurong has graciously allowed us to, has shown us, several debates he's made. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go there, and we're going to see what's going on. So, first debate is, on this video, the UNSC Infinity versus the First Order Star Destroyer. Halo versus Star Wars, who would win? And so Aiden says, LOL, no. Orbital Supermax put out 64 gigatons per shot. Combined orbital defense grid of Earth couldn't scratch the Dedex ship. Meanwhile, the Infinity punched through the shields and hull with 2 shots. Also, why are you citing the Legends number for turbo lasers? And the Infinity carries 3 Nova bombs at all times, and I strongly disagree that the Infinity dies if it pulls out a Nova, considering at any point it could jump into slip space. Leon replies, blah blah blah. Math for that is way off. It would be firing at 4%. They fire at near 50% the speed of light, so that would most likely put it in low double digits. Fast Bite says no, it's accurate, but the Nova bombs are planet crackers. That's check me right there. Yeah, just drop a Nova or 3, and then emergency slip space jump as all the orbital bodies in the area are destroyed, including Earth. That's 400 enhancements for you. ODP technically fires this 51 gigatons, so yeah, so he was saying Leon was wrong. And the Infinity does not carry 3 Nova bombs. And Mystery Joker points out that even if the Star Destroyer was putting out only 1 gigaton a shot, it would still overwhelm. If the Resurgence was, would still overwhelm the Infinity. Timothy Howard says, explain how in Rebels when Kanan nearly got hit by one and how the entire area vaporized instantly. And the answer to that is simple. They can change their power output. We see this with blasters, and we see this with, and we see that they have settings. And I believe in Darkin, either Darkin or Thrawn. He points out he orders it to switch to infantry support setting, which apparently is enough to blow up a small hill. Destroying a small hill isn't actually that big of a feat when you compare it to some of the other feats that are out there for Star Wars, but it does show, yeah, they can change their firepower. Make of that what you will. So if they can change it to, blow up a small hill, they could also probably change it to, not even kill a person for a near miss. Turbo lasers had nearly gigatons yields. They never even made kilotons. That's not true. That's not true. Why? Because we see in the original trilogy, we see Star Destroyers vaporizing asteroids, and that would take kilotons. So never made kilotons. That's not true. Yeah, I don't know where you're getting a number. It's a single Star Destroyer would take days, if not weeks, to bombard a continent to glass. So no. Sorry, Mystery. Your comparison sucks. I'm reading Saturday. I'm not saying Mystery. Sucks. He actually brings up a good point. Even if he is being on the way low side, like he is really lowballing this, right? Sorry, no. So no, Triple. Okay. This triggers me right here. This triggers me very muchly. Because in the ICS for The Force Awakens, which is canon, I cover that in another video of mine. He talks about the ICS talks about how they can actually crack the core of a planet and burn off planetary crust. So that's more than gigatons. I'm just just my estimates for it would probably be exitons. But you know, Star Wars is like nearly every other sci-fi show, somewhat inconsistent. Although you could explain that with just you know, changing of firepower settings. But again, strange. Not only that, but turbo lasers have a limited range of about 100 kilometers. The smallest can fire max at ranges of 16,000 kilometers. That's a small net gun. Blah blah blah. Not only that, but the Resurgent can only fire in the front tower. And I don't know where he gets these statistics from, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he flipped this and this around. But other than that, it makes a lot of sense. But alright. He's criticizing the design, and well, as long as you know where the enemy ship is, you can adjust where your ship is pointing. And for example, if the mouse was a Star Destroyer, we'd be able to fire all of its guns forward. Very useful, you know, because you got all your guns concentrated on one area. Lots of damage. You can do lots of damage. And then YW. You're wrong. I call him YW, but well, he points out we've seen this before, but yeah. Catalyst talks about boom. The test fire has the destructive power of the combined batteries of a Quas-class Star Destroyer. You know, again, huge power right there. Huge power. Super laser prototype that implies Territon's at least in the test shot that we saw in Rogue One was calculated at being 300 exatons. So, like I said, you know, exatons very likely coming out from these Star Destroyers. Ahsoka talks about how carving away, start exposing a planet's core. You know, great chunks of the planet have been carved away. That's the most important spot. This would take years for a non-gigaton range weapon, but it happened in a few days. And he says once again, probably Teratons. In Star Wars Storm, Chimera shoots in an ocean, creates a tsunami, implies a multi-Teraton yield weapon, and about range catalyst to ships engaging each other tens of thousands of kilometers. Make of that what you will. And the SD is straight line acceleration faster than TIE Fighter, which accelerates at 4,100 Gs. Which close the distance between the two ships very quickly. It's very fast, ridiculously fast. And so Garden Drakarov replies that Quas-class destroyer was literally a test bed for the technology behind the Death Star super laser. Of course, okay, that is wrong. Now, what he is referring to is the fact that the Quas-class, he is referring to, we were wrong, said super laser prototype. Now, the Quas-class is not a super laser prototype. It existed during the Clone Wars. Now, don't get me wrong here. It might be a super laser prototype, might be a prototype for the Eclipse-class Star Destroyer. All we know is that it was a Star Destroyer smaller than, I think, 9,000 meters. Smaller than 9,000 meters, I believe. Or otherwise it would be classified as a dreadnought. Right? So, it should be obvious here that the Quas-class is not a super laser prototype to you. It's probably not, because it existed during the Clone Wars. But even then, we see this huge amounts of firepower. Massive mining ship designed specifically to drill. Okay. If the mining ship, think about this, is so powerful that it completely is more powerful than a star, why don't they use mining ships rather than their Star Destroyers? If these mining ships have these huge lasers that can, you know, carve out great chunks, why don't they use them in battle? So Thrawn is lower cannon than even Rebels. Okay. They don't have cannon levels anymore. They don't. They do not. And he says Rebels contradicts that fate. No, it doesn't. Remember, power settings. Besides Godzilla, okay, he's referring to a movie about Godzilla. Godzilla is like, you can't use Godzilla to talk about, you know, physics. It's a movie, all right. His example is literally Godzilla. No, stop it. Catalyst is contradicted by canon materials. Okay. Catalyst. I don't see how it's contradicted by canon materials. You know, he's not giving me an example. You're citing engagement ranges of tens of megameters, which has never happened in actual canon. Well, Catalyst is actual canon, so you're no, stop it, shut up. And let's see. I do not know why Star Destroyers prefer to engage at such close ranges. Oh, by the way, we do see Star Destroyers engage at many hundreds of kilometers during the Battle of Endor, so he's wrong again, but yeah, I don't know why they prefer to engage so close. I suppose this came from the prequels, you know, trying to emulate the original trilogy, but the only reason the Star Destroyers and the Rebel fleet were so close was because Lando wanted to use the Star Destroyers sort of as shields for so that the Empire would have to destroy its own ships. And he's called it point blank range, even though they were still many kilometers apart. And then they got like right next to each other, and he implied that was just really, really close. And then You're says, well, there's no level of canon, everything's equally valid, any contradictions in firepower can be solved using power settings, which are canon. Also, do you have any source that supports your claim about the quad class? It says main batteries, plural, not super laser. So, You're just bringing up a very good point. Not super laser, main batteries. Different things. You know, you would think if it was it really was a super laser prototype, they would say the test shot was equivalent to a, test super laser, but they didn't say that. What about the escape scene? Forward acceleration and maneuverability are two different things. Call me crazy, but if it was me designing capital warships, I would make my weapons stronger than my mining tools. Saying that it was a mining ship doesn't make the feet magically disappear, or the fact they did it in days. Regarding tsunamis, I'm just going to look at this. I've never actually looked at this before. Blah blah blah. Nuclear wave making. Yet Springer says it's unlikely. Alright. The energy in a large nuclear weapon is but a drop in the bucket compared to the energy of a naturally occurring tsunami. So any tsunami created by a nuclear weapon couldn't be very large. The Tohoku earthquake and tsunami that killed more than 15,000 people in Japan released about 9,300 and... okay, no. A big number, megatons of energy. 163,000 times greater than the Soviet Union Star Bomber test. And so You're quotes it and he says, oh, right here. So that's 9.32 teratons. Bada bing, bada boom, right there. And Cardin says, unlike the ISD supporting it, a massive mining ship doesn't need to distribute its output along a large armament. On top of that, the ship is huge and has a dedicated mining laser. The thing we're not talking about is heat. So you can generate a ton of power to a weapon designed to bore through almost to the core and mantle. But the one thing we're not talking about is heat. Any ship that can pull that feet off must have incredible means of heat dissipation unless you, otherwise you lose a lot of effectiveness in the form of, well, I don't understand why he's acting like that's a big problem, because, I mean, this is another universe, well, another, you know, these guys have technology we don't. I assume they have technology to fix it and make sure these mining lasers actually work. Star Destroyers carry a lot of weapons, all of which need power from the main reactor in order to move and fire, and none of which are purpose-built for going through layers of planet. Now, I would agree with you, but only to a point, and assuming we either... What? I don't understand this clue right here. But there's an E. The mining ship is not manufactured by Quad Drive Yards. Okay. So why does the Empire buy from the, you know, factory that makes these mining ships? Hey, you've got a ship that's like way more powerful than anything our Imperial Star Destroyers could ever be. You know, why don't we let me just buy a few of your ships, right? Right? Am I right? Come on. Now I'm going to shift gears and talk about the Infinity here. Blah blah blah. 46 gigatons. Okay, so the average that these guys seem to. Okay. That means the INF must be firing with a yield fire greater than that of 1.395 tertons every time it fires. This is all good and well, but until you refute the Catalyst and Thrawn quotes without using, quote, higher cannon, because there's no levels of cannon, Infinity is still hilariously outmatched by the Resurgence. Now, I'd like to interject here. The Resurgent is much more powerful than an Imperial Star Destroyer. And then Shadowy Warrior... See, I hate when people just interject random things that are completely unrelated to the discussion into an argument. They're just trying to waste space, like, hey, yeah, you see that argument right there? Hey, I'm just gonna say an insult, and boom, I'm done. What? Are you kidding me? And I just pointed out, if you say what you say about mining ships is true, then the mining ship would be a powerful ship. Why doesn't the Empire use those as warships? And then here's the next video. Now this is a very long comment chain, so yeah. It's gonna take some time. If the 200 gigaton number is accurate, then the Death Star is pointless as tits on a fish. It's estimated it would take 30 trillion tons of TNT to blow up our moon. Given additional mass that we could guess, it would take triple to quadruple that to blow up the Earth, putting it between 90 and 100 trillion tons of TNT to destroy our planet. Okay, so blah 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 blah. That's 2 gigaton. 200 gigaton cannot be equal. 1 Slavo. Okay. He claims 1 Slavo is enough to turn a planet into a vapor cloud. Alright, wait, okay. Alright. Let me just see something here. I'm gonna use a gigaton to teraton translator. Gigaton to teraton. Well, that's a unit of mass. I'm going to look up explosive force. And it looks like there's nothing of the sort. Okay. Sad. But just off the top of my head, I think 1,000 gigatons is a teraton. I'm not sure about that though. So 8 petatons to blow up the world. No, he's saying it would take. You know what? I'm bad at math. But my answer to this is planetary shields. blah 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 blah. And then Legion says, yeah, this is probably going to be the same as Legends, since the Imperial Star Destroyer in the new canon is exactly the same as the Legends one. And we see that Turbolaser's cannon do vaporize meteors in a single shot, and since that is canon, since it was in the movies, it places them more powerful than nuclear bombs. And blah blah blah. And Guardian says, what if the Turbolaser cannons are that powerful, but they've found a way to change the energy where it doesn't explode and release its full power? Well, to Guardian, I would say, what if the Star Wars universe... I mean, he's thinking along the right lines, but, they can change power. And then, King's Claw says... Okay. Well, the King's Claw, he says Disney pulled on the reins. No, Disney has not pulled on the reins. Disney has not. Disney has actually wanked this up far higher than the wankiest dreams of Saxton and Wong. The current canon is way more stronger than... Actually, you know what? The canon from George Lucas was way more stronger than anything Legends ever had. I mean, the fact that the Death Star exists in Star Wars, that's immediately stronger than most of the things in the Star Wars Legends. And there are a lot of ships that could easily take on the Executor. There are. And Arn says your math is way off by 6 magnitude, or a factor of 1,000,000. You're also citing the lower bounds, assuming 100% energy absorbed spread across the entire volume of the moon. Could the Executor eat through kilometers on one side of the moon in a few seconds? Yes. Destroy the moon? No. Also, the Empire has long had the ability to destroy a planet. The Death Star is what we call extreme overkill. Now, no one points this out, but the Empire has had shields. Does no one see this? I mean, you know, Rogue One, we've seen planetary shields. We know they can do this kind of stuff. Why is no one, you know, realizing that there's planetary shields? Come on. Come on. Come on. Aaron Carney, my math is on point. No, it isn't. Bit slower than the Death Star, but same results. No, it won't blow up like the Star Wars V. It doesn't need to. Maybe it won't completely melt the planet, but instead fractures into various sized pieces. One thing remains constant. No one is getting off that planet alive. Yeah, that's pretty much the goal of the base Delta Zero. Or she could just put all her shields forward and ram the planet with the goal of punching to it, which is very possible with her shield output. That is true. That is true. We've seen the Sith ship, the Malevolent, many years before the before the Executor, and it jumped into a planet and rammed the planet, created a huge explosion. I'm not sure if it had its shields, a lot of its shields up. It was under fire from several Republic ships, so it probably had most of its shields down. And on top of that, most of its shields would be facing backwards, because of the fact I don't remember anyone having being attacking it from the front. It didn't plow into this moon on purpose. It was trying to escape, but one of the Jedi, I can't remember, managed to destroy it, or not destroy it, but change its direction, shall we say. And he didn't destroy it single-handedly. He just made it, run into a moon without them noticing, apparently, or being able to change it. Which is strange, because we've seen that they're able to change where they're going, even in hyperspace. But, battle droids. Not good under pressure. What I was saying is that you need to apply the force needed by the planet to give it escape velocity from itself. This is due to the fact the mass of the planet is contained by its own gravity. Agreed, Star Wars is too exaggerated, that's true. And then all this here is about the Forerunners, which I don't know much about. Your math is wrong because your starting date is incorrect. As stated before, the lowest theoretical energy to annihilate the moon is a factor greater than 30e18 tons of TNT, not 30e12, meaning it would take 37,500 full salvos of perfectly absorbent energy, most likely twice that due to energy loss. Still impressive. If they wanted to waste time destroying every particle, it would only take a few days. That's true. Man, the ridiculous power that Star Wars ships have is just... it's just ridiculous. It's crazy. Let us assume that the number of turbolasers is spread evenly, blah blah blah. Now, see, this is assuming each shot is 250 terajoules. That's very low when you consider. No, your wrong has not arrived yet. He has not provided any quotes or anything like that in this thread. So you can excuse them for thinking that it's that weak, I suppose. But it's important to know that even using these really weak firepower estimates, okay, here he claims the CSO would whoop the Death Stars. Okay. I'm disappointed in humanity. Sir, it destroys planets! Come on! Seriously? A single shot from the Death Star would destroy the Covenant ship. Quiet. Shields of the CSO couldn't take a broadside volley, and that's at 200 gigatons, which, as I've said before, very weak. No, not very weak. Very low estimate. I believe that Saxton's estimates for the actual guns were in the 10 teraton range, so that would make a bit more sense. And did you watch the video? Yeah, Supermac does a bit over 50 gigatons. One turbo laser is worth 5 or 4 of those in rapid fire in comparison. And I was saying, and Sam says, I was saying that if we have the actual power of the turbo laser, means that if all 4,000 were to be firing, the CSO would be able to keep its shields up for a minimum of 200 seconds. Okay. Stop it. Sam. Now, the other thread I've already shown you, these quotes, of imperial power, imperial might, being able to carve entire sections out of planet. Do you think a mining strip is going to be stronger than the Executor? If you do, that you're wrong. I think a good matchup for a Star Destroyer, if the 200 gigaton number is accurate, would be a Bengal class carrier from Star Citizen. That would... I have no idea what Star Citizen is. So it's, I suppose this is a... We're not debating Executor versus CSO. What? Yes, we are. And, I do think the Executor is going to win. And then Shadowy Warrior have a small debate. But since they're both wrong, super lasers could go much farther, although it's good for one shot. So without a supporting fleet, it's vulnerable. Well, the Star Destroyer could, go down to hyperspace. We've seen them do that. Or Death Star could go into hyperspace. And, alright. If this is true, we could... No. The CSO will not one-shot an Imperial Star Destroyer, considering they can stand up to their own firepower. ISDs have terrible if any point defense. Also not true. Well. We know the Executor's guns were able to take down a starfighter from the side, which is very difficult to do. So, yeah, their point defense, well, at least for the Executor, is good. But I don't know about the ISD. Take that with a grain of salt. If we were to take the actual range of a turbo laser, it's only about 100 kilometers. No, we've already covered this. We take the UNSC, it can go 16,000 kilometers. There is micro jumps. And stars tend to be frontal jumps. They like frontal ships. They like many guns behind them. Well, then they can just turn, get the Halo ship in their firing arcs, and boom, Halo ship is dead. Also, CSO does not use light as shielding. That would be Harlight, and they do not use that. Okay, I don't know anything about that. Turbo lasers are not light user either. Okay, yeah, that's true. And then you're wrong, jumps in. He says, well, Moon's gravitational binding energy is this much. That would take the Executor over 8 hours to blow up the Moon. And additionally, gravitational binding energy does not scale up with volume or mass. The Earth is approximately 2,400 times harder to blow up than the Moon, meaning it would take the Executor almost 2.3 years to blow up Earth. And then they talk about Leia, and I have no idea about this, but apparently they got into a debate about hand weapons. Now, we see blasters in Star Wars. Again, they have adjustable power settings, so sometimes they'll burn a guy, and then other times they'll, make a huge crater in concrete. And I sort of want to watch this video, but alright. It's one of Firmus Piett's videos. So we also see flesh wounds here. I would like to see Firmus Piett blasting ton of metal, rock blasting. Here, let's watch this. Like, see, explosions, huge explosions. Again, huge explosions. And again, we are going to see huge explosions. You aren't going to be able to do that with a pistol, I can tell you that much. And again, you're not going to be able to do that with a pistol. And I'm going to bet you wouldn't be able to do that with a blaster on minimum, on small power settings, you shoot, the same type of blaster that shoots and leaves you with a small cut. You're not going to be able to do that kind of destruction with it. And also, Han Solo docking bay scene, huge explosion. But I trust that you've seen enough. And we see very strong examples all the time. And then he shows Sci-Flights, which is I don't see how I'm just gonna skip through this video here. Oh, it's Brian Young, I believe. And I suppose that's him showing what the .50 caliber does. shattering some parts of metal, but then you see what a bowcaster does, and a bowcaster does that. And you see the man flying up. So yeah, they can change their firepower. It should be obvious. Estimated collateral damage for a 1 teraton turbo laser bolt is roughly the destruction of all Tokyo based on collateral damage of blaster weapons. You would need so many turbo laser blasts to get a comparable amount of destruction like the Death Star. It would be impossible to do it. Lasers aren't bombs after all. Better used to take out deep planetary bunkers. And that's a good point. And the only problem with using weaker showings is that blaster power settings are canon, confirmed by the novel Heir to the Jedi. Thank you. I forgot what the name of the book was. And in Shadow Warrior, he tries to debate this, but we already know that they can change their firepower settings. And, are you kidding me? Come on, buddy. You know better than this. I mean, you've seen, the viewer at least, has seen, the kinds of explosions Star Wars blasters can do, and the kind of power they do it at, smaller amounts and then bigger amounts. You've seen that. I've shown you the video. Also, handcuffs. I kind of want to. Oh, okay. Half of me wants to see this. Oh, I see that. I see that. Okay, that's. Oh god. And yeah, saying maximum firepower. Pulled up my blaster, checked that it was dialed up to maximum firepower. Boom. I don't understand why they're debating this. It's pretty obvious they can change the firepower. And I leave the comment planetary shields, because all I had seen so far was, why are there, why is the Death Star there? Because, and the reason the Death Star is there is because there's planetary shields. And, Ardent math and starting points are both incorrect. He claims that the moon would take only 30 teratons of TNT to destroy, and that is only 3 or 4 times harder to destroy the Earth than the moon. Those are both ludicrous assumptions. First, moon's binding energy is in the double-digit exaton range, literally a million times higher than Marty's estimate. Second, the Earth's binding energy is about 2,000 times the moon. It would take up to around 2 years for the Executor to blow up a planet like the Death Star does. However, half the Executor's weapons... Is it Executor or Executor? Ion cannons which do very little physical damage. That means it would take around 4 years, actually. So, if the ICS calcs are right, then we're looking at almost 4 years for the Executor to destroy a cannon. A planet. Why did I say cannon? Empire has collapsed to the surface of many worlds. Both Darth Vader and Death Star was a power statement. Blah, blah, blah. Was the Death Star really supposed to cut through planetary shields? Yes. How much could those have taken? Well, it actually stood up to the Death Star super laser for 1/10 of a second, which I'm sure you'll all agree is an impressive feat. Not 10 seconds, but 1/10 of a second. And a planetary shield would be a huge power drain, that is true. Glass, but have they obliterated planets, not just glassing the surface? Well, they have cut the huge chunks of, mining ships have cut huge chunks of planet off. So, that's not obliterated, like Death Star level obliterated, but, when you consider how many years it would take, and how much time and energy, it would take to not only break the shields, but then destroy the planet? I think it's a bit much. I agree the Death Star was a power statement, but was the Executor not scary if the Death Star cost Is the Death Star that money and weapon efficient? Blah blah blah. Fleet is a lot more flexible. Okay. And then I reply, yes, otherwise it would be pointless. Alderaa's planetary shield took the Death Star shot for a tenth of a second. And actually, I was wrong. You're wrong. He provided quotes on the other video. And that weakness was a sabotage. It was not intentional. I don't know why it made a link there. I wonder what that link leads to. Not going to click on it. It says multiple wrongs with your statement. I didn't say. Okay, let's just look at my reply. And he says, in an engagement, it can only fire one shot before it has to recharge for 24 hours. I remember it firing more often than that during the battle. To be precise, I think in current canon it actually fires one ship-destroying shot every 3 minutes. And it doesn't take a... And he says, I don't think it takes a teraton of energy to create a tsunami. No, he's wrong. You're wrong, provided the website. Not only that, but teraton energy weapons cannot be true since we actually do see. They can change their firepower. Okay, he's using arguments that have already been destroyed already. It's completely pointless to do that. And... it's not Legends. Legends is way weaker than current canon. Micro jumps, and the Death Star is simply incapable of doing micro jumps. I was talking about the Executor, saying it's the subject here, not the Death Star. If you're saying the Death Star could be beaten by a Covenant supercarrier, you're wrong. And then I added to add asterisk. Quite a large group we have here. Planetary shield discussion with the Death Star debate inevitably descends into. The Hoth planetary shield was going to withstand a Super Star Destroyer, 5 Imperial Star Destroyers, and at least 3 Gazanti-class starships. This is tech from ill-equipped rebels. I'm sure actual industrial powerhouses could do better. In addition, we see that Death Star can take out planetary shields. It fired on... in Rogue One. It fired through the shield. And yes, the shield was still active. The gate wasn't the generator. Merely opened a hole. And Shadow Warrior, he says... if we're talking about Legends, of single ISD could slag the surface of a planet. A 6 ISD battle group could glass a planet in 4 hours. Of course, I don't think we should be talking Legends here. I think we should only be talking canon. And in canon, we see actually much more. You know, carving the crossed-off planets. And it's a giant target. The UNSC could destroy it because mechs have unlimited range. Well, same thing with turbo lasers and the super laser. Please note that in an engagement it can only fire one shot. No, the Death Star 2 takes 3 minutes to charge up for a capital killing blast. Move along now, you're clearly lost here. And on top of that, in Rogue One we see the Death Star, you know, fire multiple times. And it's actually tracking capital ships, which I think is pretty impressive, you know. He says wrong, observe Russia, and we've already seen that website. Since we actually do see examples of orbital bombardment, yes we do, they're very impressive, blah blah, we've already seen that. Any inconsistencies you think you see can be reconciled by power settings which do exist, Sci-fi, shipfights.net, quotes from people, and in Legends, well, this is Legends. This right here is Legends. Not all of what he's saying is Legends, but some of it is, and so this right here is Legends. According to Brian Young's calculations, if an ISD uses only its main guns, which are 15 teratons per shot, it would take 12 hours to destroy everything several miles deep and uniformly cratered. Since the crust is deeper, this seems to line up with the 24 hours estimate. And then Yerwang says, I don't think he was talking about the Death Star. And then he says, oh, he didn't see the response in the edit. And then one more thing to add, I don't think I posted the tsunami site on this channel before. I just did this and no more excuses. And I said, hey, mind if I post these as videos? And he says, he doesn't mind. And he says, no, they have not destroyed whole planets with their conventional weapons. That would be insane. It would take yatatons. Also, quite a few wanted a big fleet instead of a super weapon. And then And then Juan points out, yeah, they have planetary shields. It's so dope. But I love it. I love it too, dude. This kind of power could exist in a billion years. I like to think that the Death Star is a small... I think he meant pulsar. Very small quasar. Ah, he just made, okay, quasar. That shot a very small plasma impulsed by carbon super laser. That would make sense. I guess. Now, I would like you to check out, I forgot his name. Issac, I can't remember his last name, but Issac something. His videos are on, the future, and he uses, all sorts of things about, real stuff about what we could do in the future. Dyson swarms, interesting stuff like that. I was not paid to say that. It's just a really great show, and I suppose Juan learned about it as well. It's very nice. And another thing I would like you guys to check out would be the document on the Empire versus Federation, worked on mainly by me and Yurong. Let's see, it's a nice amount of, it's 24 pages long. I know it says 25, but there's an empty page for some reason. And the link to it will be in the video description, and it is on my main page. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment. If you haven't subscribed already, do so. If you comment, if you think I'm wrong, if you think you have some counter argument, make sure to comment that, and I'll try to refute it if I can. See you later. Goodbye.